Good morning, good morning. It is Friday morning, y'all. And the only reason I know that is because I just saw y'all on Wednesday morning, and it takes me more than a few days to forget what day it is. How are you going? All the people out there, creatives, people who don't think they're creatives but are actually creatives. I'm Luris Martin Leasing. Welcome to the Creative Resilience series. Now, this show, which it has become a show, started because over the pandemic, I'm a professional creative director, producer, founder of Brown Cotton Outreach, co-producer of Sally's Way Film. And over the course of this pandemic, of course, everything has been shut down. Things are quite stressful for artists and performers. I work with a lot of people all over the Caribbean, and Trinidad has always been one of the places where you could really make a go of it as a professional creative. And now that all seems to be, sort of going away or changing. And we have to adapt. We have to forgive ourselves. We have so much work to do. So I started doing that work, and I started talking to friends, people that I admire, people that I respect. And they have been giving me the feedback. It turned into this show, the Creative Resilience series, and it just keeps evolving. It's very exciting. And today, I have to tell y'all, I am very, very excited today because today I'm talking to someone live online that I have known for the past 20 years. Oh, my voice shakes when I think of it, that I've known someone for 20 years as an adult person, right? And she has been a mentor to me for the past 20 years, and I don't know, she can't get rid of me at all. Her name is Ellen O'Malley Camps. Most of you, or some of you, may know her as Helen Camps. She's just recently been recognized as a theater icon because for the past however many years, Ellen has been a force for theater, for social activism, for women in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm so pleased to have her on the program today. We've been doing so many things together over the course of the pandemic. And I have to say it's been a real gift because usually she would be traveling this time of the year. She wouldn't be in Trinidad. But because of the pandemic, she is in Trinidad, and it's led to us getting a bit closer. We started back working more together again, and it's been a joy because Ellen makes me laugh. She makes me cry when she's not looking, and I'm just so thrilled to share her with you all today. So without any further ado, let me bring in Master Mentor Ellen O'Malley Camps. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Laura. Lovely to be with you this morning. Yes.
Yes, so great to have you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ellen, how have you been doing over the pandemic? How have you been dealing with it? I know it's thrown off your traveling plans.
Well, a few things. Number one, a month ago, 3rd of October, I was 82. And maybe it's not the same for everybody, but over the past, I'd say 20 years, I've had my freedom, which is very important to me, cut more and more and more. Can't drive because I have macular degeneration. The brain is still working, except, I miss the odd word here and there. So I felt in the beginning, I thought, oh my God, we can't move anywhere. Because I'm a mover and a shaker. With me, once I think of something and it makes sense, it should be done now. I don't understand the manana concept at all. Everything is done now. But something happened recently, and I suppose like everybody else, one doesn't stop, and I use the word growing as a person, becoming more sure, more identified with being okay. In my case, becoming a human being rather than a human doing, because I was a human doing, right? A lot of extroverts are. So the pandemic, I'm actually quite enjoying it now, tell you the truth. And the other thing is that I have Loris and Wayne and a group of people. Everybody else seems to be dead all around me. So when you said Helen Camps, I don't think there's anybody alive in the country that would remember Helen Camps. I mean, I became Ellen O'Malley Camps one day when I was at a funeral, and I was looking at the headstones, and I thought, oh my God, if I was dead here and then have Helen Camps up there, what does that mean? My name is Ellen. I don't know how. In Irish, I was called Nell Niwalia, which is Nell O'Malley. And that, of course, Nell and Ellen and Helen are all the same. But I kind of claimed back my tribal name, which is O'Malley. So right now, being able to hand over to somebody that I trust totally has been just absolutely wonderful. I thought it would be terrible. I'm always complaining about old people hanging on. I really have no time for it. I think it's a load of bullshit. I like young people. I may not like where you're going. However, it's your turn. And I believe old people should just get the so-and-so out of the way. And at the same time, you want to trust the person. So I feel brown cotton will go wherever it's supposed to go. There are certain ideals, of course, like in any system, and I have a system, which I'm hoping will be adhered to. But if they're not, so be it. Right, enough talk for now.
Well, for those who may not know, Ellen and I started working together in the year 2000. How we met, I always thought was so funny. Because I had just moved to St. Lucia to live in sin with my then boyfriend, Wayne.
Oh my God. It's a wonder I even spoke to you.
And Wayne at the time was working with a theatre company that had just started in St. Lucia called Théâtre Tout à Fait. And Ellen
founded by me.
Founded by you, by Ellen. And they were about to go on a tour to Ireland. And Ellen was already in Ireland making arrangements for the tour. And when I came along, there was a young lady who was not coming to rehearsal. Everybody was upset about it. And Wayne, they're having their arguments, and I'm barely listening. I'm just waiting to go out to dinner or something with Wayne, right? And Wayne's like, Loris could do it. And I'm like, what? And they say, yes, you could do it. And they're like, you want to go to Ireland and be in a play? And I was like, well, of course.
No, I wouldn't like that.
No, I was like, yes, like, screw that girl, I'm going. So I ended up going to Ireland.
And you were terrific.
Thank you. And I was terrific.
Yeah, you were terrific. Yeah.
And when I got there, I met the leader of the group for the first time. And it was this whole thing. I went to meet her, and we met and had soup. We had pumpkin soup in what's it called? Something bar, Temple
really?
Bar. Yeah, we had pumpkin soup in Temple Bar in Dublin. Yes.
All of them, yeah.
And I was terrified because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go meet this white lady in her country. And she don't know me, and them just bring me along, and it's a whole thing. And I remember we sat there for about 3 hours just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And at the end of it, I was like, this is going to be really interesting. This is going to be exciting. And I had no idea.
I have no memory of this at all.
I know. I've heard that's something.
That's not a lesson you.
I know.
No, my memory, I'm very visual. So even childhood, I don't have memories. I just have pictures, snapshots of things, so It's not to denigrate you in any way that I don't remember the conversation.
So you don't even
I'm
remember.
sure all I was thinking was, Christ, I hope this woman can act. I hope she can do the play. And after that, I couldn't give a shit. And as long as you had a sense of humor, and as long as you were bright, which you were, as you know, and this is a terrible admission, but I do not suffer fools gladly at all, at all. And by that, I'm not talking about having degrees. I'm talking about people with a sense of self. I mean, one of my favorite things I talk about is a man same age as me, in his 80s. And I think he went to school till he was 14. And if I met him tomorrow morning, we'd have a great conversation. And his philosophy is that his father told him he should always be able to walk the roads and look any man in the eye.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about that kind of, coming from that kind of a place. Those are the kind of people, I like.
Well, one of the things.
And by the way, I can work with the devil.
I know. I've seen it. Remember, Shumasi?
Don't remind me.
Too many skeletons. One of the things that I think over the years that I've really learned about you, I feel like I kind of met you, in a different part of your career. When you were on a sort of a different path, even though we did have the 10th Theatre in St. Lucia with Theatre Tout Affair, and then when we moved to Trinidad in 2003, we started the Brown Cotton 10th Theatre Ensemble, did all those shows. We had our 10th in Princess Golden Grounds, but there was, of course, your earlier iteration of Trinidad 10th Theatre. Before that, working with the Little Carib. Before that, working with the Trinidad Theatre Workshop as an actress, as a writer, as a director. So what do you think it is? All of your past apprentices, so to speak, that I have encountered, like, Wendell Manwaran, Christine Johnson, Raymond Chukong, people like that. One of the things that that I recognize, because I met most of them before I met you. Mm-hmm. And they would talk about you and mention you when specific things were happening, something that they might have learned from you that they were doing, or some quote that you would have said. Not that I necessarily connected that when I met you, and I've always wondered, what is it that you think, what is it that you maybe imagine that you bring out in people?
Well, first of all, I think I have a rather Trumpian type personality. And by that I mean, I hope I'm not the same sort of jackass, but by that I mean power is very important to me. And by power, I mean using my will, my childhood. I don't know where it came from, but I was always the boss. Even in the schoolyard, I would be the one who would sort things out. And I mean, actually would take over. And when I look back now on even the 10th Theatre and the early days, even when I was working with Derek Walcott, I was never very interested in being on the stage at all. I just found it extremely boring. I'd learn the lines. We all knew it. You paid your money, go home. I mean, I didn't even turn up for a curtain call one night, and Walcott nearly killed me because I said, well, they saw the show. I did my work, the end of it. But, it was not my thing. But I think when I see, you were talking about creatives, and, I have a lot to argue about where you're coming from like that, because I think different types of people have different ways. I think I work out of a sense of scarcity. of making do, of moving on, of this is the situation, and this is what we have to do, and the ship is sinking, and everybody has to move to the right, and if you don't, I will shoot you. And that's the type of leadership that works. It can be, and I can only say this now because I'm 82, but there is a certain charisma attached to people like that because of the kind, and that's what Trump has, this kind of, and I hate bringing him in, and that's the end I'll mention of him, but there is a certainty about some people. Now, other people have charisma in a different way, but this type of power-based thing is, I think young people who attach to me. First of all, let me, I ramble all over the place.
You?
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm as Rachel Maddow on MSNBC says, I connect the dots all the time. But I can say that back in Trinidad, first of all, I was born the year before the war. So there's a certain atmosphere that people who are in Europe, whether you were bombed or not, there was a certain thing that definitely dominated your life. And there was a poverty level and there was a boredom level. For me, I was extremely bored. There wasn't enough books around. You didn't have, all those kind of things. So I worked out of scarcity. And I think I never saw adults as being much useful to me.
Right.
That sounds terrible. Of course they were there for me, but as far as I was concerned, they were a waste of time. My mother, God help her, was dying with TB and died at 48. My father was an alcoholic, poor man, very creative man, actually. But as far as I was concerned, and this sounds so awful when I'm talking about it.
Well, I feel like I can relate to some extent, because I think I saw, when I started working with you, I think one of the things that really attracted me was that sense of responsibility for self. That you always kind of pushed for that level of accountability in each of us. That we were all sort of responsible for our section, and it wasn't about coming to mama to say, I've done this and I did, what else do you want me to do? But it was very autonomous. It was like, you are responsible for this whole area here. Just get that done. I trust you to do it. If you're having some kind of serious problem, check me. If not, get it done. And I think I saw that in my mom a lot. Like growing up, my mom was like the brain, no, not to denigrate my dad, but my mom was like the brain of the family. She was the one who would say, okay, let's do this, and everybody would turn and go in that direction, and it would usually work. Very much.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, I don't see that necessarily as a talent. Yeah. I see that as a, Noam Chomsky talks about, having a kind of a thing. And I always say as a joke, I was born with F, blah, 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 U across my forehead.
You could curse your head, have no rules, just saying.
Well, anyway. Anyway, it's there. And at the same time, being a Libra, and being a dialectical thinker, if you say white, I have to say black. And it's not to be domineering. It's so that we will have the conversation that will come to probably the democratic decision, which is usually my view.
I think that takes me back to something that you said to me really early on that I really kind of take to heart, where whenever we were working with groups or working with people, one of the goals would always be to leave the people more empowered or more powerful than they were than when we met them. Even if it was only about changing their perspective of their power and showing them that, where they might have thought they were powerless, they have more agency and autonomy than they would like. And that idea of a more powerful world where everyone is powerful enough to say no.
That's
yes,
right.
no, yes, that yes, no exercise.
I used to get really, and I felt bad about it. I used to get really bored instead of being flattered when, as you know, I did an awful lot of work with Hazel Brown and various people working with women, single heads of household, whom I so admire. I don't have words to express how much I admire Trinidadian women and how they manage to survive and to pull through and to get their children, into the best possible position they can. But I used to get really pissed off when I would have women coming to me saying, "Oh, I wish I was powerful like you." And I would be looking and I'd say, "What? What a waste of time, looking to somebody else." And I would always say, if you see it in me, then it's in you. Only you're just too blasted lazy to go and do what you're supposed to do, But I would also like to say, too, that going back, when I came to Trinidad, remember in the 60s was the beginning, if you like, of the age of Aquarius. And this is where I'm going to sound like a complete nutcase now.
Go for it.
When I did come to Trinidad, there were all these very powerful people, innovative people. I don't use the word creatives like you do. But, there was Desmond Allen and James Millett and Lloyd Best, and it goes on and on and on. And they were all men that were my friends that I could talk to. I thought in those days, women, when I came first to Trinidad, were mostly dumb because all they were interested in, and it was the section of society I was mixing with, was if you had the right shoes to go with the right dress for the wedding or the party. And I didn't even wear shoes. So really, you know what I mean? And then, of course, I began to work with women and everything changed because I was always a feminist, a second order or whatever you call it, feminist. But I began to admire women and I found men to be increasingly dull, as I met more and more women. So, but that age of Aquarius, if you like, was the beginning of doing things outside of the box. And I saw the musical Hair. And it's very interesting because I ended up then working with Rod McDermott years later when he did the music for Derek Walcott's Joker of Seville, which I was in. But there was that sense of, so the people that were attracted to me were young people who wanted to do what I was doing. I often used to make a joke and say it's because they couldn't get into the choir, or they couldn't get into the cricket team, or they couldn't get into the football team. So where were they coming? By me. And we were all a bunch of, none of us knew what we were doing. I had no training. I watched Walcott, who had no training in theatre either. But was a very focused person, knowing what he was doing. And I don't know, like I picked up a book in what was then Hilo, and it turned out to be bent. And I read it right there instead of buying my groceries, and I decided to do it. Now, this is the kind of craziness I'm talking about. It never occurred to me that I could not do it.
Yes.
And I think that is the attraction. And so therefore, I assumed everybody would want to do it. And I wouldn't talk about it to people. I would just do it, whatever it was, just do it.
Yeah.
The same thing with a tent, where are you going to get? Why would you use a tent? That's what Philipsonians did. Why do you need a building? Why are you going on a presidium? And then there was a big slump. That was all in the late 60s, 70s, 80s. And now, because of COVID, I'm coming back to the COVID. I always manage to come back somehow or another. I think young people in the arts are being forced now to think, I hate using the expression, but you know what I mean, outside of the box.
Well,
So
you
I
have
think
choice,
there's
the
a
box
connection.
closed.
Yeah, I think there's a connection between what I did over 50 years ago and what is happening now. You know, and I think my sense of being able to let go, which, yeah, you're right, you were sensing it a few years ago. Yeah, I was not the same in Tout à Fait as I was with Trinidad Theatre. Well, I was a different person. I had become a psychotherapist. I had become a theologian. I had become a, you know, you name it, whatever. And you change, you know, obviously, but the basics stay the same, you know. So, yeah. So let me shut up for a
What
minute
was
now.
it? What was it like, as going from somebody who said I can do it and did it, who may not have had formal training and all of that, and then to have gone? I mean, I know you had like scholarships when you were younger and stuff like that, so the brain wasn't sleeping at no point. But then you went on after doing that work, after 10 Theatre, after Little Carib, after working with Derek Walcott. Then you went on to go to university, to go back to university, and got a master's in theology.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
So
did that. Well, what happened was I was bored. I was in Lucia, and I woke up. You see, with me, I move on. I think I'm the only person that I have met that moves on the way I move on.
yeah,
I wake up like I started the Housewives Association, and I worked like 18 hours a day in spite of having 5 children. Getting that as a PR person, I never wanted to be the top of anything. Just I wanted to push it. And one morning, I think it was 5 years in, I woke up and I thought, that's it, end of. And I think it was when they started to write the Constitution. You know, I don't fit in. You know, you talked about me being an outsider, insider, and it is true. You know, I'm outside. I was always a loner, although I'm very gregarious. But I'm a loner. I do it on my own. So so I just moved on. And then one night after doing what was the name of the play? Oh, the famous one, Albie one. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Albert LeBeau said to me, "Oh God, that was a great performance." I said, "That's it. I'm not performing anymore." I knew it was the end. And
yeah,
that is when I moved into trying to create an infrastructure for the theatre around the Little Carib, so that uh, so that writers like Walcott and actors and performers would have a space that they come into, that you didn't have to plug in the water every time, put on the electricity every time, sweep the floor every time, you know, look for ads every time. So that's what I did, and I like doing that. I like I I suppose I like order, and I like beauty, and and you know, I like seeing things work, and I don't like waste, waste of time or waste of talent or waste of materials. You know, so every time I moved on, going back, as you said, going back to university. No, I was going to university for the first time in my
right.
50s. When I was 18, 19, I won every scholarship you can think of. But poverty and bad advice in those days, oh, Nell, why would you take a scholarship to go to university? You're so good looking, you know, you'll get a man no time, you'll be married and have children. Now, at that time, the only thing I knew was that I did not want to get married, and I certainly didn't want to have children. You know what I mean?
5 children later.
And so I'm a primary school teacher, which in those days it was not a degree course, you know. Um, so going back in St. Lucia then one day when the theatre was going well, I was just I woke up one morning and thought, that's it. That's it. I'm going to university. And I rang up Trinity College Dublin, and they told me it was too late to do, you know, and they wanted me to do psychology. And I had read all of Jung, and I thought, Why would I be paying money to go and do something like that when they're stuck in humanistic or whatever it was? And I got on the plane and I went to Dublin. And they had to take me on. And I did theology because I thought it was the most useless thing I could do. I was fed up being useful. And in fact, it turned out to be wonderful because some of the best minds in Europe, in the world, were in Trinity College in those days, the philosophers. And it was just brilliant. It was a wonderful time. I just loved it. Even though I'm an atheist, so I must have been the only theologian. I was an atheist, if you can be one, or agnostic.
I hear you. It sounds a little oxymoronish. I don't know.
I know.
This idea of moving on, as well as you talked a little bit earlier about adapting, sort of like about the young people now having to think outside the box.
Right.
One of the things that I really struggled with, especially towards the start of the pandemic, when it's still very uncertain, but I've kind of gotten used to it now. Was sort of like mourning for the things that I was going to do that had to be canceled. But I'm hearing from you talking about having sort of like this power, this ability to just say, click, move on. Do you, when you move on, like when you decided to go to Trinity, did you miss your life in St. Lucia? When you moved to St. Lucia, did you miss things in Trinidad?
No. And I had to tell my husband that when I used to go to Ireland for 6 weeks, I would never even think of the children or him. Terrible. Awful. And that doesn't mean I don't love them. And for instance, I love the way I have my house here now in Schneider Gardens, Betty Valley. I mean, it was a house on stilts and I love it. But the minute I get on the plane, I'm gone. That's over for a while. And I'm in a new space and whatever that is. And also the sense of responsibility. I think my sense of responsibility goes back to always feeling as a child, as a baby, feeling responsible. I was the eldest. I'm sure you know the same thing. I had two brothers. I would have nightmares of me going up, trying to get all the wolves and the tigers and the lions in front of me so that they wouldn't eat them up behind. That was a recurring nightmare as a child, So when I go someplace else, then that's lifted, that's gone, and I don't understand it.
Has there been like anything from your past that has been difficult for you to move on from?
Yeah, everything.
Feels very contradictory.
No, I'll tell you. Well, here's how it is. I remember in my early 20s, again, it's this sense, it's the will, it's choice. This is why when I'm working with you guys, I'm always talking about, how, people talk about letting go and moving on. What is the mechanics of it?
Yes.
But I remember in my 20s, one morning thinking, that's it. I've had enough of moaning and whining, not to people, but inside about my childhood. And it was like, and the visual was like, I just closed the door. And that was the end of that. Then the next thing came up was the God question. Because, I was born into Irish Catholicism. And I liked the Mass in Latin because I like Latin, right? Okay. But there was a series of lectures here and I got on everybody's nerves, and people were telling me that I was just trying to show off that I was being different. When in fact, I was desperately trying to understand where the Catholic Church was coming from. This idea that revelation was only through the Bible or only through what the church said. I'm sorry, I could not, And then when I went to Trinity College in Dublin and I saw a book, and to this day, it's what I say to people when they talk about, do you believe in God? I want to know are you talking about who or what? If you're talking about who is God, forget it. Go to somebody else. I'm not there with you. There's no such thing. If you ask me, what is God? Now we can have a discussion. And then I found out that ordinary lay people weren't being told what, in fact, the hierarchy of the church, with famous theologians like Kung and Schleiermacher and all of those, had moved on from. But we were all too stupid to be told that personal experience was a form of revelation. In other words, you and I have talked about peak experiences, which, if you're an artist, it can be called an artistic experience. Sure. If religion is your background, it's a religious experience. It's the same goddamn experience. It's a more than. It's a veil being pulled back. It's a seeing the same thing, and it's now different. It's a paradigm shift. And we all know when we moved from Newtonian physics, it's not that we got rid of that when things fall, they fall to the ground. We incorporated it. And yet it's totally different.
It's evolved.
Yeah. So the new paradigm of quantum physics is completely different. And you still have the other. You know? So I suppose I'm good at paradigm shifts.
Paradigm shifts, you mean?
Paradigm. Thank you for the correction. Thank you for the correction.
One of the things that has fascinated me about working with you, and I feel like it's something that I've really benefited from working with you at this point in your life for the past 20 years. But I feel like it's something you've also done before, and it's sort of like the inner work aspect of doing theater, of performing. And then you went on to do psychosynthesis training and theology. And I felt like all of those things I benefited from when I was working with you, because I had...
As did I. As did I. And let me tell you something. When you think, you see, this is when we're true to, like the morning I got up and said, I'm going to university, when you're true to something, the children were growing up, everything was on their way doing whatever, and what I was doing was no longer, as I told you, I had this kind of dream one night where I was standing with all of these electrical cords out of me, and I'm holding one with nothing to plug it in, nowhere to plug it in. So I was bereft, and I moved on. So I think there's this notion of where does it all start, and as I say, every time anybody talks about anything, I think this is where, I'm up in the sky, up in the clouds, if you like, most of the time. However, I am absolutely one of the most grounded people I know.
Yeah.
Now, so the two things go. So the groundedness. So for instance, you talk about creatives, and I wonder what the ass are you talking about?
I keep wondering.
I know creative people. Creatives, and this is not to argue, this is just I'm interested in your notion when we spoke that everybody is creative. And I get very tired when I hear that, because it sounds, and I know where you're coming from, and I'm right there with you in a practical sense. We are all creative. Somebody told me once when I felt, oh God, I've done nothing with my life. And they said, oh, but you've had 5 children. Well, I wanted to hit the person. Cows have children. Dogs have children. Cats have children. Everybody has children. What's creative about that? So we made love one night and, right? Here's a child, right? Okay.
How does it go?
I don't consider that very creative. But anyway, so when you're talking about, and I worry a little bit about, I remember looking at one of these American programs where these awful, obese people, and I can talk about it because I'm obese myself, right? Anybody who's 30 pounds overweight is obese as far as I'm concerned. And everybody's saying, but you're beautiful on the inside. And I'm saying, would you ever look at yourself? Would you ever listen to yourself? You're an idiot and you look terrible. And you have diabetes and you have hypertension. You know, so would you get yourself together and do something about it? You know what I mean? So there's this kind of trying to, and I understand it. You know, no child must be left behind. Look, some children are very talented, whatever you want to call it, and some people are not. And yes, they must be offered all the chances everybody gets. But then the creative idea, when I heard Miss Akbar Ali talking about it, seemed to me, and this is not to put down anything she's saying, I think she's absolutely right. However, if listen, there are levels. I don't care what anyone says. There are levels. And if you're trying to bring everybody to the same level, what you get is mediocrity, in my opinion. Yeah. And I worry about that. So yeah, we're all creative. Yeah. Okay, so you make a nice dinner, you're creative. No, maybe you're just a survivor and you learned how to use potatoes and something in a way that tastes better than Mary down the road does it, or, you know, whatever. So I'm not trying to put it down, but there is a difference. And there's different types of creativity, you know. I never thought of myself as an artist, if you like, until Derek Walcott told me one day, because I produced the first theatre season, and he said, but Camps, you have to understand, a good producer is an extremely creative person. And it's only recently I see that, because that means somehow or another, as a producer, I had the good sense to pick the right play, to pick the right people to do it, to pick the right time to do it, to pick, you know, to do all that. It's an extremely creative thing, you know. And so that was useful for me, because I never wanted to be on the stage, because really the actor was the creative person. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
they are. Yeah, of course they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, one of the things I've been grappling with is this idea of the creative industries.
Right.
And it's something that, you know, the governments of the world are trying to sort of like identify, describe, because it is something that adds a lot to the economy. It generates income and that sort of thing. And yet we have this very limited view, particularly in the Caribbean, of what is a creative person. A creative professional is what I mean.
I think, yeah, maybe. I see there's something wrong there. We haven't got the language. It's a bit like, you know, like Derrida and Foucault and them talking about postmodernism. What the ass is that, number one? But number two, non-binary positions. So I understand it. So, for instance, some young ladies and young gentlemen are now calling themselves they, because they don't want to use her.
Pronouns, yeah.
Right, okay. So I feel what you're getting at is trying to find some, I don't know if it's definition or description, because I'm hearing business.
Yeah.
So business is one thing. So if you're in the business, that's what you are in. So it doesn't matter whether you're an actor or you're a producer or you're a director. Your business is acting. So you have to get jobs doing that, right? Okay. And if you don't treat it as a business, then it's a different thing, you know. It doesn't mean that people who work for nothing, I very stupidly worked all my life for nothing. And it was a choice.
Yeah.
Because again, for me, it gave me power. Because nobody could tell me what to do when they were not paying me.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that because I was married to a doctor who was able to support me and my children.
Yeah.
You understand? So there is now, and that gets me back to, we talk about Port of Spain, as a city. Cities are only cities, in my opinion, when they have enough people in it that behave like, not entrepreneurs, what's the word, who look after the arts, who give to the arts. Patrons.
Yeah.
Patrons. A city is a place that has patrons. We have no patrons.
No,
At least I haven't seen them yet. I'm sure we have, but I haven't seen them. I have been a patron to myself.
Yeah.
Or my husband has been a patron. I always say one of Trinidad's greatest patrons is Michael Camps, because it allowed me to work all those years to build an infrastructure, to build a women's movement, to do blah, 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 whatever. And so that is, I think, what I worry about when I heard you guys talking, and it was kind of flattening everything.
Okay, I'm just going to give Ellen a little time and see if she comes back. We seem to be frozen, Ellen.
Did very well. I'm very well connected. It's you.
Yes.
So I was just saying, listening to you all, I just, I worry about this flattening, this mediocrity. Some actors are better than others. Some, and I think you should be given some schools, they don't have anybody coming first.
Everybody who turns up gets a participation trophy.
Well, I don't mind that your participation, but you must know that's not a trophy. That's just saying that you turned up, and good for you. In India, for instance, which I think is wonderful, a lot of doctors have a sign on their door saying failed. They failed the final exam. But that doesn't mean that they're not doctors. They were not, some people are bad at writing exams. They spent the 10 years or the 8 years or whatever it is. And those people are wise enough to understand, well, we'll give him a chance because he's cheaper than the other one down the road. And then you find out that he's a fantastic doctor.
So what do you think is the difference between, let's say, mediocrity and excellence for you? Because I feel like sometimes it's subjective.
Yeah.
And how do you, because this is something that I've seen you actively do, which is try to sort of push people out of mediocrity or pull them or guide them, depending on who the person is, or give them that little extra help they need to kind of, even sometimes it's uncomfortable, I've seen people
think here, okay, when we come back to the mediocrity, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
You're not fine. It's you. You're having trouble, not me. Mediocrity. Here it is. I think mediocrity is often an easy acceptance of what is. For example, when we did Rampanalgas in St. Lucia, and I had to stand outside that tent every night and listen to you all singing mostly off key, and then having the audience coming out and telling me, oh God, thanks, Mrs. Camps, that was wonderful, oh great. And I am thinking, are you out of your mind? That was not great, And then I've gone to shows where other people, and this is where the subjective thing comes in, didn't think much of it, and I saw what went on. Where an actor, for instance, has really gone, I've experienced it myself, where you have hit, we talk about hitting the right note. You know it. You just know it. You know, I remember walking out, going to see a play one night with my brother Tomas, and it was famous actors in it, and it was a Tennessee Williams play. And after 10 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. And I was thrilled when I found he was the same. And we had bought tickets for the next night, which was Seagull with with what's her name, that English actress. Oh God, she doesn't bother with facelifts and things like that. Redgrave, not Redgrave. The other one, huh?
Emma Thompson.
Anyway, no, much older than her, around my age. Anyway, and it was so fantastic. You know, now the Tennessee Williams play was much more interesting play than the Chekhov Seagull, you know, which is kind of boring to look at. But it was just fantastic. And you know when it's fantastic, and you know when it's not.
Yeah.
And maybe the audience have to be trained as well, not to accept anything. You know, I mean, I found in Trinidad that people were so thrilled when my shows would start exactly at 8 o'clock.
Yes. Yeah.
And so therefore they came in and they thought it was great. You know, because there you are, because something met their best expectations. I'm actually going to a show and it's starting at 10, at 8, and it's ending at 10. Hooray, you know.
But I think that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about working with you, because before I worked with you, I worked with a lot of different theater companies. And one of the things I found when I started working with you, and that I kept up when I was running things, is that punctuality. That saying, we start at 8, we finish at 10 for rehearsal, and we would start at 8 and we would finish at 10. And I think
can I jump in there? Because really what's behind that is not punctuality. It's respect.
Yes.
It's respect. I come from a respectful place. I expect to be respected.
Yeah.
And I respect you. And I am not going to waste your time. I have told actors, and I've been totally wrong, that you really are not going to go far in this business. Huh? Okay? And I've been wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's okay. That's fine, because everybody makes a mistake. But because at the time they were really bad or whatever it was, that doesn't mean that it didn't get better. So mediocrity and who is creative?
Well, I think
I don't know. Creativity. See, I think there's artists who are creative. I think there's woodworkers who are creative, and some who are not. So it doesn't mean that everybody that takes a piece of wood and makes up is creative, in my opinion. It might be just whittling away to waste the time or whatever it is. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
For me, I think from working as a professional creative in Trinidad and in other places for the past 20-something years, I think those seemingly small disciplines are the difference between the mediocrity and the excellence. For me, I see the work. When I look at something, even if other people don't like it, I'm like, how hard that, I'm like, I know how hard that was to do, and doing comedy. That's something that I see a lot. You'll do a performance with other comedians, and a comedian will come and do something that is so well designed and so well structured that I appreciate it, and the audience doesn't appreciate it as much. But another comedian who hasn't prepared, who's just coming and doing like sloppiness, they will love him. But that's the only time that will ever work for him.
But that's the kya. That's the the kya element. Laugh element, which I don't respect.
Well,
and yet there are some people like what's his name? Oh God, who has that element, but is also brilliant. What's his name? The little boy, you know, when his
Larry.
mother. Larry, I mean,
Larry's brilliant, but Larry puts in work
I know.
for years with no audience and building scenes and over 20 years, you know. So I think for me.
So there you are.
Yeah.
Instead of talking about me, where did that come from with him?
Yeah.
You could say it came from the pain. I really do think an awful lot of creativity comes from pain. You know, comes from discomfort, comes from you know, a different view, not fitting in.
Yeah, and I think that pain and that discomfort makes you do the work. It makes you learn the lines, like learn them and know them. It makes you practice and do the run through and the run through. The best comedian I work with, he writes.
No, but deeper than that, deeper than that. That is the practice. You understand? That comes. Like I hated learning lines, but you could be sure I never miss a line.
Yeah.
Learning lines. Okay. Because I'm so arrogant, I don't want to speak anybody else's lines. I'll make up my own. Right? Okay. It's awful. However, I think the creative thing we're talking about is pre all of that. It's something it's a disturbed soul. It's a soul that's connected somehow to pain in the world and to joy, but somehow he or she has to do it. Has to do it. Now, they may never do it, but there's this thing of I had to do it. So I often say to people who say, oh God, I hate this job. And I say, well, right, okay, you have children, you have enough money to support the children. Hallelujah, great. Continue with the job. Join the marionettes at nighttime or find, something else to do. Your creative side. And then sometimes when you hit your mid-40s, I mean, it's not a joke. It's an existential crisis of, I have the right car, I have the right wife or husband, I have the right job, all the children are in school, everything is good, and my life is empty. And that is where, that's painful. It's like, what is it all about? Why am I here? So people who are what you would call creatives, and I call maybe artists, would have faced that crisis as I did when you're around 7. And then again when you're 14, and then when you're in your 20s, and then when you're in your 30s and your 40s. And I only realized, I think I've had my last one at 82, since you was about time. And I really have turned a huge corner because I have faced up to my own shadow side, which means everything that irritates me about somebody else is really myself. And once I face up to that and I take responsibility for that, then I can make a decision that I'm going to be kind. And the work that we do, as you know, and I know you're going to, if we have time, the inner work, because I think everything starts with the self.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the self is. You guys, Miss Akbarali and yourself, are talking about, well, to be true to myself. And I'm there looking and I'm thinking, are they joking? Are you talking about? Are you talking about the mother self, the child self, the beaten up woman self, the painful, whatever?
Yeah.
I call them eyes.
Yeah.
I am this, that, the other. And the self, of course, is beyond all of that. So what we do, and this is where theatre becomes useful, and which is why I stayed with the theatre, is because I found in rehearsals, you had to search for something. Stanislavski had his way of doing it, Brecht had his way, Grotowski had his way, and I have my way, which is a combination of the Juve. And by the way, I cannot not be talking to you and not talk about Juve, right? Okay.
Yes.
What moves me? I never knew what moved me, except that I knew it. I wondered, what happens when you go to sleep at night? And one day I decided that really you're dead. And the only reason you know you're not dead is when you wake up the next morning.
Yeah.
And then you're not dead. Okay. And then I came to Trinidad and I bounced up this wonderful word, Juve.
Mm.
And then I began to look into it. And Carnival then became a huge part of my development, in a sense. So for me, every day is a Juve. So every time you go on stage, it's a Juve time. It's a time for redo. And Peter Brook, the famous director, talks about the same thing. You have to reimagine, reinvent every time. You know?
Do you think that idea that idea of reinvention has been part of helping you sort of like have that ability to move on and maybe bounce back from things?
Well, it's all I know. So I suppose, yeah. You know, I mean, really, what else do you do? I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, let me say something. I find that creative people are curious, and yet I have absolutely no curiosity about nature. You know, when my husband raves about the sunset, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, it's the sunset. That's what a sunset is supposed to look like. And excuse me, the rain is supposed to be that beautiful every time. So why are you going crazy about the rain? You understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So I take it all for granted. I suppose I'm merely like a pantheist, part of me. So there's no wonder in it. My wonder comes from people. I am completely fascinated by people.
Is there anything in particular that fascinates you?
About people, everything. Yeah, why is this one so stupid? And why is this one so interesting? And what makes this one, why would this person be nasty? I can't understand it.
Yeah.
I cannot understand. I really can't get my head around bigotry, racism, fascism. I can't understand it.
Yeah.
My brother says I was born missing a gene. What he calls the bigot and the racist gene. I simply don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't even see color. I mean, somebody said to me, I met somebody and said, oh God, she's beautiful. So what color is she? And I'm going, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, was it? I don't know. You know, I really don't know.
Yeah.
So
have you felt like over the years living in Trinidad and Tobago, do you feel that your color, your Irishness, your whiteness has made a difference, has impacted your life here?
yeah. In fact, one of the reasons that I remember I told you earlier that I left Housewives Association was because I understood that me being white and good looking, which I was with long black hair,
Hot girl.
I tell you, real hot, with a lovely figure, as they say, and a big mouth, and a kind of an idea that I didn't have a place. It didn't occur to me. Well, Walcott said to me one day, you don't know your place. I didn't know I had a place. And I found that that was affecting some of the women in the group, that they really saw things happening. And it was because of me. And the me that was making it happening was a white, foreign woman. And so to me, that was not doing any favors to the majority. I mean, I used to be asked to do ads here one time, and I thought the advertising agencies were crazy. Why would you put a white woman to do an ad and the whole country is black? It was just so stupid to me. So, so yes, it definitely did make an impact. I think I was probably, yeah. I think in those days, I remember sitting in the car one night, we were going out, and I had this dress that Bosco Holder had given me, a lovely little, it was a Belgian lace neck to it. And I had my hair all done up. And the window, my husband was gone in someplace, and next thing there was a tap on the car window. And this very old gentleman said to me, "Oh, long time I haven't seen a real lady." See what I'm talking about? So that had to do with white.
Yeah.
It had, and I knew the picture he was looking at, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that wasn't to make him a racist or to make him that he kowtowed to white people. These are pictures that he saw.
Yeah.
You know, pictures that you saw. Now you will see pictures of beautiful black ladies with that kind of a neckline and the hair done up and everything. So it's a different world, you know.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So I understood. And I got a lot of backlash. I mean, I was scapegoated like you couldn't believe. I was attacked. I had phone calls threatening my life at nighttime, and most of it had to do with the fact that I was white and I was foreign, and I had a big mouth. It was always the big mouth, or potty mouth as they call it, isn't it? Yeah, whatever it was anyway.
So what would you say to, there's so many people, I think, in the society, artists, creatives, non-creatives, who want to speak up, want to say something. Do you think we need that kind of activism now? Do we need big mouth people standing up and saying?
Always. Yeah.
Do you feel like?
But I found after that time I was talking about that, when I stood outside Whitehall and was selling fish, for £1, with people, or nobody's doing that anymore. That is why I think the Me Too movement in America was so stunning to me, which is fantastic. And then the Black Lives Matter, which is fantastic. Yes, of course, you have to stand up.
Do you feel that kind of social activism, that kind of protest that used to be very kind of in person, do you feel like it's migrated online? Or do you feel like it's changed?
To tell you the truth, I don't know enough. Because I don't go on Facebook, because you have to put like to some stupidness that somebody took a picture of their dinner last night or something. I can't be bothered, really. Yeah. I've never done Twitter. I don't do Instagram. I don't do anything. So I don't know enough. I do know this, that like everything else, it's a double-edged sword. I think it's great that everybody can get up and talk. But I also think because you can do it without being seen, without your physical self, people are saying dreadful things and really getting away with it. Bullying, just like how you see bullies on the road in their car. I think the cyberbullying is terrible. Anything like that is awful. But I think more and more people are going to be making perhaps documentaries, movies. I think movies make a big difference. Maybe just because I'm a fan,
No, I agree with you. That's one of the reasons why I think I've been moving in that direction into video, into film for quite a few years. And just to bust the file here one time, just to let people know, we are working on a documentary about Ellen. And
After this, you don't need to make me tonight. This morning, I should say, yeah. Oh my God, it's time to
I know we're almost done, but I just wanted to share this very quickly.
Yeah.
So this is the flyer.
Oh my God.
Outsider, Insider. It's a project that Ellen and I are working on right now, a documentary.
You're working on. I am not working on this.
A documentary about the true life and times of a Trinidad theater icon. I think it's important for our theater history. I think it's important to Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe Ireland, probably Ireland as well. So we'll see how it goes. We're in pre-production now, and if you enjoyed this broadcast, I think you're going to enjoy the documentary even more. And Ellen, we've run out of time. It's about 12 minutes over, which is very, very common on creative resilience. Don't worry about it. But I just want to take this opportunity to just wrap up a little bit and, just pull out a few quick little takeaways from the discussion that we've had. I felt it was so important for us to talk in the early part about your efforts and your drive to empower others and to create a powerful world where we can really have what I would call true democracy. True democracy. And I really heard
if it exists.
If it exists. If it exists, because that kind of ties into some of the things you were saying later on about people being sort of like equitable, but not necessarily equal. So having equal opportunity, but at the end of the day, some of us just rise.
Yes. Yes. And should be honored as such. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really hold on and learned from you, and I'm using it like hell right now because my car got stolen a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really stressed about it.
I wish I had the money to get you one.
Oh, you're so wonderful. That ability to move on, and to imagine and to move on and to be able to move on to the next thing and to open your life and your heart to another opportunity, another way of being. I think that's very exciting, and it's something that I am working on in myself.
Great.
So
and if I could just say one last thing.
Sure.
Just one last thing. I have never been happier in my life, and I'm crippled with arthritis, and it doesn't matter. For some reason, I have never, and I would like to say this as much as possible. I think it's about being rather than doing. I think it's about being grateful for what you have. Gratitude, that when you get into bed at night, you actually have a bed. You have a sheet over you.
Yeah.
And you think of all those children in Syria and every place. Oh my God. I don't mourn about them too much. I really don't.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm just not big enough of a person. That's their lives. That's their lives. I'm not responsible for their lives. But I am, in some little way, responsible for seeing as much as I can to make the world to stop. Okay, I will not contribute to mind pollution anymore. And by that I mean thinking nasty thoughts about people, always going back over the awful things that happened to me, always looking for somebody else to blame. I have cut that out of my life, and it's an act of will. Do it. Anybody can do it. And then just to make this, I have a responsibility to useful and harmless and make this a better place. And by the way, it's fantastic being with you, Loris.
I enjoy you very much as well, Ellen. I really appreciate you. And I think we have a lot of fun.
Now we start crying now.
Oh, bromance time.
Never happened, not with me. Okay, my love. You
All
take
right,
care.
guys.
God
So
bless.
we
God bless.
are gonna
Bye.
leave you. Ellen, don't do anything. I'm just gonna hang up the thing and then we can wrap up after
Okay,
off
great.
the thing,
Okay,
right? I know
right.
you will just jump off.
No, no, I'm saying here. I'm saying.
So, guys, if you would like the opportunity to work with Ellen, she's actually doing an inner theater workshop. It starts next week, but we do have a few more coming up. So you can check that out. You can go to our Facebook page, Brown Cotton Outreach. You can also join our email list and find out more about these workshops. But I have been doing inner work with Ellen over the past few weeks, and it is the bomb diggity. I also just wanted to share very quickly some of the wonderful comments we had from people during the show. Christine Cole has been listening, and she says we're all creative. She says enjoying listening to this woman, so real. Later
And won't be
on,
anything else?
she's been with us. She says that we have to do the inner work. Every day is Juve. We'll use this. I love it. Jared Primer says, I really appreciated this conversation. Afi is here. She says, Ellen always speaks about being able to identify in order to disidentify. And to me, this is very profound lesson or advice. Okay, and nice. So I just want to say thank you to the viewers for watching, for those who will watch. And Ellen, it was great talking to you. I feel like I learned even more about moving on, inner work, resilience, mediocrity, and excellence.
Oh, God,
My perceptions of it. And with that, we will say adieu. Thank you for joining us and take care of yourselves and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, bye.